Good afternoon, everyone, and good afternoon, chaps. Welcome to the Green Arrow podcast from Fantasy Football Hub as we look ahead to another FPL season with a big kickoff just 3 weeks away. My name is Fergie. Welcome back, everyone. And if you are a new watcher or listener, a very, very big welcome to you too. We hope you enjoy and can be part of our journey throughout the season. 138 episodes, chaps, and still going strong. We have first welcome back 6-time top 10k finisher and a man who will be watching European football this season for the first time in a while, the wonderful Adam Hopcroft. Welcome, Adam.
Yeah, thanks, Fergie. And my arrow was a green one in 38. I just want to get that in there quickly.
The 1 week I don't ask, look, and it's the 1 week.
Exactly. You've got to with this game, you've got to take all the plaudits you can for the green arrows. So, yeah, no, it's good, and delighted to be watching European football next season. So, yeah, can't wait, and I'm looking forward. But I'll be honest, I'm looking forward to the Premier League season returning as well.
Indeed, and Villa, I hate to say, well, he finished above Spurs for the first time in about 130 years, and they're looking pretty strong for the new season, Adam. So I'm sure I've lots to talk about there. Maybe even a couple of options. What a signing Pau Torres is, by the way.
Oh yeah, unbelievable. Very good.
Maybe also welcome back 8-time top 10k finisher and part-time Gary Anderson lookalikely, the brilliant Rich Clarke. Welcome back, Rich. How are you?
Hello, mate. Yes, good to be back. It's actually 9 now, Fergie.
9? I'll call you out on last year.
Top 10k on the last goodness. Season. So yeah.
Notice how I teed you up there on purpose, mate. Yeah. I teed you up there. Didn't I?
Yeah, well done. Good to be back. I've enjoyed the break, has to be said, but I've rolled up the sleeves and just about ready to get going now. Like to take a good break, but I feel it now is the time to start looking at it in all seriousness. So yeah, itching to get going again.
Great to have you back, chaps. Okay, just before we kick off, do you want your FPL team rated for free? And do you want recommendations for improvements driven by artificial intelligence? If you do, you can click the top link in the description below and go to Fantasy Football Hub to get your team rated for free. We will be showing our current drafts and ratings later in the show. Spoiler alert, our 3 ratings are quite well. 2 of us are very high. 1 is not so high. So it's going to be interesting to have a chat through those. And if you do join for the full package as a paying Hub member, we are so confident in our tools and AI that we are offering a staggering win your FPL mini league or your money back offer with 50% off in pre-season. There's never been a better time to join us at the Hub. Before we kick off, we just wanted to let you know what we're going to be doing on Green Arrow this season. Not much has changed, but it may be useful for new watchers and listeners. VIOLIN moments will be back every week, starting obviously after game week 1. These are the laugh out loud moments of the game. It usually involves failed hits, benched points, or other such sad stories from our watchers, listeners, and indeed most of the time from ourselves as well. We have Rich Pickings, which is where Rich introduces the main talking point of the week, usually based around strategy or players or teams to target. Hopta Stats, Adam, famed for his statistical eye, dazzles us with some ad hoc stats that will help those with 50-50s and decision making. The Spathometer will be making a return. This measures the success or not of our chip usage throughout the season as we chat through and rate them either spaffed, meh, or smash, depending on the outcome. And Fergie is a punt, so I'm still a complete punt, you'll be glad to know. And we'll be giving weekly shout-outs to uber differential players who I think are going to bang over the next 4 weeks. The quality of these do vary from Gundogan, Almiron and Solly March to Adama Traore, Ferran Torres and Anthony, but the less said about those last 3, the better. We'll have some fun with it and search for those rank rising points along the way. We'll do the best captain every week and, as usual, our teams for the coming week. So exciting stuff there. Anyway, on with the show, on to FPL. Rich, first, you wanted to just have a quick chat first around kind of strategy, stop, start and carry on.
Yeah, just before we get forward facing and start looking at this coming season, I think probably many of us have been reflecting on last season, and it's probably important to just to take a checkpoint and think about what we're going to continue to do, what we might do differently going forward. So just have a little sort of chat about stop, start and continue type activity. There's a few basic principles that I'd like to share, and just from my own reflection in terms of how I'm going to start the season, how I've approached my draft, that sort of thing. I've always done the same thing in terms of preparing for a season, which is to take my own sort of subjective look at the fixtures and group the 20 teams into 3 buckets. The good bucket, the teams I'm going to make the bulk up of my squad from. The maybes, so where I might fish around for some bench players or some single team picks, but the fixtures may not look great, but they're still worth considering. And then also the avoids, teams with certain fixture patterns or just that I don't fancy at all, that just completely take them out of my thinking at this early stage, and that just leaves me with a much more narrow pool of players to pick from. So I've done that, and I think really one of my first points that I would make is just to begin the season, play safely with the fixtures. Look at the fixtures that are coming, and particularly in the first 4 weeks, but up to a 6-week window, and pick good players with good fixtures from good teams. I mean, it sounds ever so basic, but it is a really good way of setting up your initial squad. And so that's how I will carry on. I've always done it that way. It may be a templatey team as a result of that, but I do think that's a good way to set up the squad. I've noticed from that fixture analysis, there's a lot of teams that have 3 away games in the first 4 fixtures,
and also 4 in the first 6 as well, isn't it?
Exactly,
yeah. And I think in general, I think that you should avoid those teams with your first draft or with your game week 1 team, because the power of home games, particularly in early season when there isn't a real form horse that's emerged. Why have a team with 3 away games in the first 4 fixtures when you can have teams where they've got the opposite, 3 home games? So I really think that's a good principle to apply. And just on those 2 things, if you put a draft together, and we'll have a look at those soon, you can then spend the next 3 weeks really just focusing on filling in the final edge pieces to the squad. So we'll get onto it in a minute, but it's really just like who's going to be that 4th and 5th defender, who are the keepers going to be. These are sort of the minor picks, because you've already put the backbone of the squad together. And then for me, probably the most important one is just stay patient. If I was going to give one piece of advice to any FPL player, it would be try and make patience at the center of your thinking. Impatience will kill you at FPL. Save a transfer where you can. Have a good first bench player, and stay patient and let your squad picks deliver for you. And then a final one that I just put in here would be try and save 0.5 or 1 million of that first transfer budget, so that you're in a good position to make a move or make a change in game week 2 or 3. So there's a few from me.
Lovely stuff, Rich. Very, very sensible advice indeed. Adam, have you got anything to add to that list?
No, I liked all of Rich's points. I'm quite relaxed about game week 1, because I think the way that I see it, it's just setting up a base position to start the season. And also I think setting your own expectations, you're gonna get things wrong. It's not obvious who the value players are at the moment. It's not obvious, which players are going to start the season well. So I think be kind to yourself, manage your expectations that you will get some things wrong. You'll get some things right as well. But I think taking safe decisions for me is where I will go. My team will be, I wouldn't say relatively template, but template in my own head in terms of who I think are the safe players in terms of minutes. Who are exactly what Rich said around fixtures, the 3 and 4 at home or the 4 and 6 at home. There's some really, and I think that is important, because you can potentially wildcard then at game week 6, 7 into when you've got some data, and actually it will go the other way, where there'll be like 4 at home for other teams. So in the next 6. So I completely agree. And it's just, for me, it's just about setting that base and that starting point. So I don't actually see it that exciting. I find this quite mundane, if I'm being honest. The exciting stuff happens in the first few weeks of the season. I'm pretty set on my team. I don't think there'll be many changes between. I think there'll be a couple, but I'd be surprised if it's massively different from where I am now.
I think the I think the teams that a lot of us will be targeting have pretty much all got very good fixtures, a lot of home fixtures, and a lot of affordable assets to double up and triple up on as well. We'll talk about it a bit more now, but teams like Arsenal, for example, teams like Man United, teams like Brighton, you mentioned those really good home, really good fixtures. With Man City, for example, outside of Haaland, are we sure really who's going to play in it? In any of the other positions apart from the usual? Ederson, Rodri. We're not sure what the back four is going to look like. We're not sure what the midfield is going to look like. With Mahrez now leaving, and Gundogan leaving, you can maybe, take a chance on someone like Foden breaking through. But when there are other players, you can have other guaranteed starters from top 6, top 8 teams, and even outside, players like Eze, players like Bowen are all that price. They got 90 minutes. They're really good players on form. So it doesn't really seem worth having much of a punt, as you say, in the open 6-week games. I think that's the main thing I'm going to take forward this season. I was actually having a look this week. It's the first week this week I've had a look at all my teams in all formats, and I kind of reflected a little bit on how I play FPL at the moment to how I play the other formats. In the other formats, which I finish reasonably well in most of the time, Sky and Telegraph and all this stuff, I play the exact game what you guys are saying now. I just stay with the pack early doors, and that's all I do. And then you use your kind of knowledge and your wisdom and your eye and all the stats on the hub and all this then to inform you to go along. But going massively different for game week 1 just for the sake of going different. I'm not saying if you really think so-and-so isn't a good pick and go with someone else, absolutely fine. But just doing it for the sake of being different, I don't think is wise. So I think that'll probably be a theme throughout, won't it? Just before we move on, just wanted to say hello to everyone in the chat. Absolutely fantastic to have you all back. Ross Johnson is back. James Phelan says, my favourite pod is finally back for a short break. Gianni asked us, he's starting work at 12:30, which in 3 minutes' time. So we dragged it out enough for you, Gianni, now. You'll be back in at 3:30. MRF is back. Had a bad season last year. Looking forward to starting off again. FPL Springbok. Paul Van Rensburg says, missed you guys in the pod. Stephen Moore. Zoran is in. Archer. Alex McCarthy. Sultan Said. Graham Buckley. Scoped DFS. Josh Harvey, Bless Osiri, John says, let me guess, Rich with a template team and Fergie with the crazy team. Maybe not too far off. We'll take a look at that. Tom Stevens said, yeah, Rockman, and so many more. Thank you so much, everyone. Lewis is in as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We're not going to dwell on this too much, but firstly, sort of, you mentioned Adam on kind of the backbone, the staples of the team. We've got 5 players on screen. 4 of them seem to be in everyone's team. Well, maybe even all 5, but Estupiñán, Saka, Haaland, Rashford and Trent look to be reasonably staple in most teams. I haven't got Trent in my current draft, spoiler alert, but Adam, firstly, can I ask you on these, I use the word essential tongue-in-cheek, right, because as we all know, there are no really essential picks, but the ones you're not going to be starting without, how do those names sound and where do you go from there?
Yeah. It's interesting, actually. So I think Haaland's a no-brainer, and there's no point in even discussing it further.
No,
I think most of the game will have him. The more I think about it, I like Estupiñán because of the 4 fixtures at home. I think his price is kind. I think Brighton structurally have been quite sound. So I think he's a good option. Quite like him. Who were so I had Saka, Trent. Who was the other one that you mentioned?
Estupiñán and Rashford.
Yeah, Rashford, I agree. I think, in fact, I think Rashford for me is almost certainly going to be in as long as he's fit. The 2 that I would contest that I don't think are essential or whilst they're currently in my team is Saka, definitely. Saka, I'm surprised.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why. I think if we look at the data from last season, I think Odegaard and Martinelli, in a lot of cases, offer stronger cases. So I'm not saying that I don't think people should pick Saka. I'm surprised that there's such a large percentage have gone to Saka in comparison to both Odegaard and Martinelli. Martinelli's the one for me. He's 0.5 cheaper. And if we look at some data, which I think is important, if we were to break down, so this is expected points per match. So if I was just looking at Arsenal, You've got Martinelli was 4.95, and Saka is, I think it was 4.63. So there is a fair big difference there. If you look at actually points per match or per appearance, Martinelli edges it again. And I think the other thing, there was a drop off for Martinelli noticeably when Nketiah come into the team instead of Jesus. So if Jesus starts, I don't know. For me, I don't think it's as clear cut. Now I currently have Saka, but I think for me, he's definitely not nailed, and he's one of the ones that I think could go. I think there's a debate between Martinelli and Saka. I think Odegaard could be impacted by the fact that Havertz comes in. Havertz could play one of the eights. Or Trossard could play one of the eights, like I think he has been doing. So that could impact Odegaard. He might have a bit more of a defensive role. But I think with Martinelli, I don't know. I think he's as good, and if I think he'd be as good if the prices were even. But when you look at it as 0.5 cheaper, I think there's a really, really strong case for him. Trent's a tough one because I think on paper, when we see him playing in the role that he finished the season in, we think, yeah, he's a really, really sound option. He obviously did quite well for England playing in the midfield role. But you look at their fixtures, how many clean sheets in the first 6, I would question that.
I agree.
The other thing is, just for context, and I don't know if I've got some data here, but I looked at the last 10 matches of last season, and you would expect, I'm going to just quickly bring it up now. So if you just bear with me a second, because Trent was clearly I think most people would have said he would have been the best defender. And you see comments where they compare, people compare Trent to midfielders and equivalent. But looking at the end of last season and looking at Trent, the last 10 matches, I'm just having a look now. So he scored 60 points, but you had both Eze and Jacob Ramsey score more points than him in that time frame. And when you actually look at the defenders, Tyrone Mings wasn't too far away from I think 2.5 million is a big difference.
Yeah.
And I think there could be an argument for going for a City defender and a bigger midfielder. Mm-hmm. The only caveat I will say, and I think this is quite a strong point as to what I said at the start about playing safe and going with a base squad, I think it's almost easier to start with him and then make changes rather than bring him in, because if he does continue in the same vein of form, he could go on to another level. So my idea at the moment is to start with him, but he could be somebody I get rid of as soon as game week 3, because someone like Reece James or Ben Chilwell, and if you look at Chelsea's run from 3 to at least to game week 6, incredible fixtures. Yeah. But then that also allows, if Bruno doesn't start the game running, I've got some opportunity to upgrade there. I could get rid of a 6.5 million mid and upgrade at that point. So I think it's probably better to start with him. But I think I would just put, out of all of the ones you mentioned, I think there's a case against Saka, there's a case against Trent.
Yep, and I think that's fair. Rich, what are your thoughts on the immovable staples in your team to start off with?
Yeah, I mean, I get Adam's points. I think I will start with Trent. I think he is really, you've got to consider him to be, a premium. We haven't got many premiums in this year's version of the game. There's only really 3 attacking premiums: Salah, Kane, and Haaland, and then nothing. Nothing above 8.5 million or 9 million, have we? I mean, Rashford is not. There's nothing in the 10 million plus bracket at all, other than those guys. And Trent sticking out at sort of 2 million more than most of the other defenders is going to be hard to get to if you don't start with him. You're not going to be wanting to put 2.5 million into a defensive upgrade. So it's because of his route to points. I was going to ask you guys, if Trent was classified as a midfielder, what would you pay for him? Or what would you price him at?
So,
7, 6.5 as an
No,
out and
he's
out
just,
mid.
no, he's a
Five,
CDM.
5.5.
He'd be 5.5 because he's a
Five and a
CDM.
I
half.
think he was
yeah.
a CDM. You'd see him as a CDM rather than
Well,
an
if you
attacking midfielder.
if you look at his heat map from the match yesterday, he gets in the final third more as a right back than he does in his new role. If you look at the heat map from yesterday, he's very much centered around around the pitch. He'll get the odd assist, right? He'll play through a beautiful a through ball. He retains his assist potential in terms of corners and free kicks and stuff. But for me, a lot of if you look at a staple Trent assist, aside from the set pieces, it's where he's going down that right hand channel into the right hand side of the box, flinging the ball across for one of the guys to tap in, and he's not going to do that in this new role. So even though he's playing slightly more, well, I suppose an argument is he playing slightly more up the pitch in that role. I'm not sure.
I think the data since he's been in that role, in terms of his attack, in terms of his actual output, he did do pretty impressive. I think he got like a goal and 7 assists towards the end of the season, maybe in the last 10 games. And he looked great for England as well. And I think he gets more into the position where he's likely to have shots in and around the edge of the box. So I'd probably expect to see more goals from him. But I agree with you, Ferg. If he's a midfielder, 5.5 million max. Because you're losing all the clean sheets as well, aren't you? Which and Liverpool did actually do okay for clean sheets last season. I know it seems like they didn't at times, but they had a spell where they got quite a few. So, I think if he's a midfielder, I wouldn't even be considering him.
Well, interesting. All right. Well, I think I'll have him. I think I've got at the moment I've got all of those guys on the slide in my draft. I always think at the beginning of the season, which player, there's that question that goes around, isn't there? Which player did you not own for the entire season that you'd wish you'd owned? And for me, it's not owning Estupinan in the last quarter of the game. Threatened to completely derail what was a great season. Just literally the agony of those hauls that he had in the during the double game weeks for Brighton was horrendous. So at 5 million, I think he's an absolute bargain, and I just think he's got to be in there. Plus, his ownership is scary high, isn't it? It's up over 50% or something already.
Is it really? Wow,
really high. So I think he's got to be there, certainly for the first 4 games. And because I'm going to go with Trent, I think it almost forces you to have a couple of 5s rather than 5.5s. Otherwise, you're going to be putting too much money into the defence.
I think Trent is the pivot person in the whole team, in terms of what you can do elsewhere in your team. He's whether you can have a kind of mid-price to more premium defender, like I know we haven't mentioned Robertson, but the 5.5s, as Adam said, the Man City defenders, the Chelsea defenders, people like Luke Shaw and stuff, or whether you can then go for double Arsenal attack, for example, a triple Arsenal attack, double Arsenal attack in midfield, or go for someone like who's in my team at the moment, which I'll show you in a bit. But yeah, he seems to be the key player in the team, which enables what you do elsewhere, doesn't he? Let's move on to the keepers. We're not going to dwell on these, as I say, for ages. What we'll do next week, what we'll do in the next podcast, to a more standard sort of preview where we go through the teams, go through the fixtures, go through the players, and start to properly look through it. Because in 2 weeks, we'll only be a week away from the season. We'll have a lot more information. We'll have a lot more friendlies. Transfers will be confirmed. We'll see a lot more. So this is very much a kind of high level overview at the moment. But in terms of keepers, what are your thoughts, Rich? I'll come to you first on keepers.
In
the game.
This is a little bit of an unknown area for me at the moment. I'm hoping that in the pre-season, some gems or some 4.0s might emerge. We're still not quite sure, are we, about the Raya situation at Brentford? I've seen a lot of drafts with Flecken in them, and I don't really know much about this chap, whether he's definitely going to be nailed on as the starting keeper for Brentford, but he's certainly a candidate. Typically, I'm looking at going for a 4.5 and a 4.0 as the option. I don't think it's probably worth, but the one the one arrival in the last week is Onana for Man United. I think we're still waiting for a price on him.
I hope he's
think
not
it's
5
at
million.
5. Everyone thinks it's going to be 5, right?
Why do everyone think he's going to be 5? I
just because he plays for Man United. I don't think they'll make it available at 4.5.
No.
They might put him in at 5.5.
Well,
yeah.
5.5 because if they put him in as 5, he'd be in everyone's team, wouldn't he?
You think so?
think.
I'm not sure. I mean, I think if I'd consider him, but I still probably would want to go for a 4.5 option. I think. I don't know. But anyway, we don't know his price yet, do we? No. But I think he'll come in at 5. So he's and then the most popular pick seems to be Pickford, but I just don't really want to.
I get excited about that.
An Everton player.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel right. They don't win a lot of games, do they? And generally speaking, they struggle. And although in a Sean Dyche team, he might make a lot of saves and pick up a lot of BPS. I still don't feel great about having Pickford in, so I'm a bit undecided. What about you, Adam? Where are you looking?
I like Pickford because I've sort of looked a little bit more long term with the goalkeeper. Because I'm not going to really want to be using transfers there. So going up until game week 8, Everton have got 5 games at home. They play so some of their fixtures. I think their fixtures are top of the ticker actually for the first 8 game weeks. Mm-hmm. They've got Fulham at home, Wolves at home, Sheffield United away, Arsenal at home, who they kept a clean sheet against last season, Brentford away, Luton at home, Bournemouth at home. I think I like Pickford, so I think he's. For 4.5 million, Dyche controlling the team. I think he's a really, really good option. I think if Onana comes in at 5, will make it interesting because they're third on the fixture ticker, and obviously they've got 5 home games in the first 5 matches.
8 matches.
8. Sorry, 8. Yeah, of course. If it's 5 in the first 5, be no brainer. But I think he'll be quite good on BPS as well, based on some of his metrics for passing last season. So they're the 2 under consideration. I can understand Fleckham, but Raya, to my knowledge, hasn't gone anywhere yet. So that probably rules him out. So they're the 2 that I'm looking at. I haven't really considered anybody else because I'm happy with Pickford. Onana would make me think about can I steal some money from elsewhere to bring him in.
I've got a player in my team haven't mentioned yet, and he's currently joint top, I think, or he very roughly for predicted points for the first 4 game weeks, and that's Steele for Brighton. Now I know Verbruggen I think has signed and it's kind of up in the air, but Brighton's fixtures start off with are pretty good. Obviously, he's in at the moment, with the caveat that he is number 1. If we get any rumour that he's not, he'll be out straight away. But in terms of his predicted points on the hub for keepers, he's either top or he's in the top 2 over the first 4 weeks. So I quite like that for 4.5. Even though Brighton have sold a few players, I think defensively they'll still be decent. They've still got Duncan and everyone else there, so he's just another person. There was a comment in the chat around Johnston for Palace, got the best long-term fixtures. I think he's 4.5 as well, could be decent as well.
I think on both of those, definitely with Steele, you want to keep a long-term, and there is a chance at some point, whether even if he starts the season, they could transfer over, and then you're going to either be pushed into a transfer or a wild card. Yeah. That's what I quite like about Pickford. He's as safe as they come in terms of, and so I think he's hard to look past. I do personally, compared to Onana would be the one that might make it interesting.
Yeah, if you're deciding not to go with Luke Shaw and you want to cover the United defense,
exactly.
So yeah, agree.
What about Ramsdale? He's 5, isn't he?
He is, but I just think there's far too many other brilliant options. The Hub AI, interestingly, if you look at the Hub 100% team, it clearly advocates triple Arsenal attack and Man City defence. It really fancies Arsenal to score a lot of goals out of the season. I think they play, the 3 promoted teams or 6 out of the first 7 fixtures of from the teams with the worst XGC from last year, so it heavily promotes that. And that's the thing with Rams, and maybe even an Arsenal defender like Gabriel. Okay, he's nailed for starts, and probably a few clean sheets, but the upside of having a three of, as you say, Martinelli, Saka, and Jesus, or an Odegaard, Martinelli, or something like that. The upside is massive there if they continue their form and beat teams 4-1, 5-0. So many points to be had there in it. Let's move on to defenders. A few options I've got here on the slide. Players like Estupinan, Gabriel, Trent. All these are fairly obvious and touched on. Got a few on the slide which I think are reasonably interesting. We've got Fabian Schär, who by far and away had the most shots on target last year for all defenders in the league. John Stones, just to maybe have a chat about Man City defence. Obviously, they signed. Excuse my pronunciation. I haven't heard it yet. Is it Gvardiol? I'm not sure. So we're not really sure how the back four is going to look. Rico Henry is 4.5, so he's kind of rivaling Botman at the moment. I think for that 4.5 spot. I think Botman personally is such a boring pick. They've got poor fixtures to start off with, and he's not much of an attacking threat. Tarkowski for Everton, I've seen mentioned in parts. Adam, you mentioned around the potential for the Everton defence, and spoiler, I've got Dalot currently in my 11.
That was Dalot.
Obviously, it could change, but his underlying stats when he plays are better than Shaw's. It's just a when he plays, and he's $500,000 cheaper. So they're just some names to throw out there. Adam, what are your thoughts on defence, aside from the obvious picks this season?
I like the obvious picks, from being honest. So no, but I do, and this is I know everyone's going to want me to be different and throw out some names, but I think they're obvious. Again, we're starting with this base point. I like Gabriel, and I think Arsenal have got goals in them from set pieces. I think he's at 5.5 million. I think
He's
sorry,
five.
I meant 5. I was going to say reference that White was 5.5. Yeah. I think he's a nice little surprise. We've mentioned Estupinan. I think he's good. I think City with their fixtures, if we know who's nailed, Stones, Diaz, Akanji, Ake could all be options. So I think there are options from City. It's just Pep does tend to have some consistency at the start of the season, which is quite good for us. So I think if we get an idea of what his starting lineup's going to be, he might stay fairly consistent out for 3 or 4 weeks to get some rhythm. So I think there could be a City defender worth going for. Outside of that and the people that you've mentioned, I would stay safe. I'd focus on the fixtures, which are all the teams that we've mentioned. Yeah. And I think what I would do personally is, if you've got 3 players you're really happy with, back it up with a couple of 4.0 defenders.
Yeah, set and forget 3, isn't it? Really?
It takes away the headache, doesn't it? And there's less rotation at the start of the season as well.
We've had a couple of questions in the chat around whether 4-4-2 could be a potential this year. I don't know. I can't see it myself, just because there's so many fantastic midfield options, mid-price midfield options, and there's a significant lack of second and third striker options. Third definitely. Rich, anything on 4-4-2 at all? Or?
Yeah, I think when you see my draft, you'll see a 4-4-2 pattern in there, but it's really just as I put it in there as a placeholder, just to try and cover all these, these big teams in my good fixtures bucket. So I think at the moment I've got a 4-4-2 option, but the more I think about it, the more I just think I put too much money into the defense again. With Trent in there and 3 other decent defenders, I think it's too much. I think you are better off with a 4.5 and a 4.0, or if we get 2 starting 4.0s that we're confident about in pre-season, that could be the way to go with it. I think there's is it Bayer of Burnley? Although he's got a blank in game week 2. I mean, if you can ride that out, you've got a ready-made doubler there for whenever they reschedule that fixture, haven't you? So I like certainly 1 4.0, but if we get 2, I think you'll see a lot of teams with 2 4.0s.
Interesting. And your thoughts, Rich, on defenders before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think really I'm searching for that 4th defender spot. I'm similar. I'm pretty set on Shaw, Gabriel, and Trent as the starting three. I think that's probably the best. That is a template three, but that's the best three to start with. And it's really that 4.5 fourth defender, first bencher. Initially, I thought Botman was the safe one, but if you look at Newcastle's fixtures, they're really not good. They've got European Champions League football to come, and I just think you can get away with not having a Newcastle defender to begin with. So Botman, I don't think is the answer, but there's lots of options. I was going to ask you, Adam, about the Villa options at 4.5 because Cash is 4.5, isn't he? And there are some good 4.5 options out there, but none of them are immediately sort of leaping out at me as the one to go for.
I'd leave Villa. They've got 4 away fixtures in the first 6. And at home, we were incredibly good for the last 7 or 8 games, won them all, only conceded 1 or 2 goals. Away, our performances weren't as consistent. And I think the other factor is there's a little bit of doubt as to what the starting lineup will be. We've strengthened our squad. I am not certain Matty Cash will be in the starting lineup. Okay. I could see Konza playing as a more defensive right back. But with Europe as well, there could easily be rotation. So I think Villa's a wait and see, in my opinion. I think going on to the point of 4-4-2, I don't see it personally. I just don't, because I think you could have a flexible squad and possibly make it work some weeks. But looking at last season and some of the more recent seasons, if you look at points per match and the midfielders and the strikers in some cases, but the midfielders tend to really excel. So I like having that 5th option there. And I think the price points are so kind for midfielders this year that I even think some of the 6, so that you mentioned Eze, Jacob Ramsey's injured, but he was incredibly good towards the end of last season. So I think there's just so many great options. And Cisse we haven't mentioned. I think he looked good. There's some really, really good options in midfield. And plus it's more exciting having an extra attacker rather than you lose a clean sheet. It's just, I don't think I've ever played with, I don't like playing 4 at the back. So I think the more exciting and where the opportunity is with the midfielders this year.
Talking of midfielders, let's take a look. Obviously, Salah at 12.5. Don't think he's in any of our drafts at the moment. If we're going for Haaland, he's very, very expensive. Fixtures maybe don't lend themselves to it, but I've got a few players on screen who haven't, Rashford, Saka we've mentioned, Arsenal midfield we've mentioned, a couple of other players. Eze played yesterday in a friendly, goal and 3 assists, just completely carrying on. He looks to be the absolute talisman. I'm really tempted by him. They've got a decent start as well. Raheem Sterling at Chelsea, and any of the Chelsea, we're not really sure kind of how they're going to line up. I think from game week 3, Chelsea's fixtures really turned, so we probably get the chance, a bit of a wait and see on Chelsea as a whole maybe, and then just dive into Chelsea if they look good in the first 2. But their fixtures for game week 3 onwards are pretty insane. Got Foden up there, and kind of the City mids as well. Spoiler alert, I think he is in one of our drafts. We'll touch on that later. Son is in there as well, 9 million. I did a video this week for the Hub, and Son, apart from last season, has been a 10.5, 11 million fully justified player in FPL. 9 million, crazy price for me if he can get anything back. And I know it's only words, but he did say this week, that he was injured a lot last year. He's looking forward to getting back this year. He can't wait and stuff. So I'm pretty keen on Son. I haven't put Bruno in here. We can have a chat about Bruno as well. And the other one is Bowen. But there's so many midfield options. If we already think we've talked about Rashford, Arsenal midfielder or 2 are essential. There's Mitoma. There's all these players. Whose turn? I can't remember. Rich, is it your turn first this time? Do you want to kick us off?
Okay, yeah. I like Foden. We'll have a look at drafts later, but basically, you've got to bear in mind that Haaland is almost a neutralized player. He's not going to make any difference in the game, even though we're going to spend 14 million of our budget on him and captain him every week. if everyone's got him and everyone's captaining him, it makes no difference to your ranking or your ability to progress. So how are you going to benefit from Manchester City being the best team and beating everybody almost every week if you don't have another attacker?
Yeah.
So I think for that reason, and the other reasons like Mahrez being rumoured to be leaving, Gundogan having left the club already. I've spoken to a City season ticket holder who doesn't think Bernardo is going to feature very strongly. I think Foden's going to see a lot of minutes. I think probably his expected minutes in our hub AI are a little bit lower than they will turn out to be. So I'm really confident on Foden getting a lot of game time. And for that reason, I think he makes a really good pick. But it's a crowded midfield, and you probably got 10 really good candidates in midfield for that power five, and he's one of them. So I'm not surprised you put him at the front of the queue there, Fergie.
Yeah, his minutes at the moment for the hub, his average minutes when he started over the whole season was 57. We bumped it up to 65. If you think he's going to get more than that on a regular, if you think he's going to get 75 or 80 every week, he's definitely one to consider.
Yeah. So I like Foden. I think Spurs are interesting. I mean, another player that's not on the slide, but I like and have considered for game week 1 is James Maddison. I was going to ask you, and I'm doing another pod on Sunday with the above average guys, and both Tottenham fans. So I'm really interested in some fan insight into what they think of the Maddison transfer, because I think that's a really exciting transfer for Tottenham. Someone that can create the chances that they've been missing. So I really like Maddison as an option. But Tottenham's fixtures, to our earlier point, 4 away in the first 6. Man United, their only home game in the first 4. You've got to wait till game week 5 before they play Sheffield United at home. You just don't have to start with a Spurs player, I don't think. So almost like see how Postecoglou does, see how attacking they look. Probably inevitably Kane will grab a few goals, but is it worth spending the money straight away? So I think Spurs are in that kind of a void bucket for me at the moment, and just because of the fixtures. Chelsea, they're definitely going to have a better season than last season. Sterling is down to 7 million. Not surprised you put him on the slide, Fergie. But then the other, we've got other options but I just don't know what the side's going to be right now. Hopefully we'll get some clues in pre-season. I couldn't name you Chelsea's starting 11 for the first week. I'll probably get about 3 out of 11 correct, I would imagine.
Won't have a clue. Yeah. Adam, your thoughts on midfielders?
Yeah, loads of great options, and they all seem to be the best options. Seem to be between that 6.5 and 9 million price points. So I want as many spots. I want to have 5 spots in that category. I prefer the Arsenal and Man United ones to Foden personally. I just think that your minutes are pretty much guaranteed, and they could score as many goals. It will go close to, and you've got to bear in mind that Haaland is going to get the majority of City's goals, you would think. Mm-hmm. So you're hoping for assists for Foden. Also, as well, we need to see what position Foden's playing, because he hasn't actually started in Mahrez's position that frequently. So it'll be interesting to see how Pep uses him this season. I'm not as sold on Foden as most, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's a bad option, and I may still go there if he shows some decent pre-season form and it looks like he's going to start, because he's obviously got good. He's done well before in spells, which I think is key in spells, where you look at like some Martinelli, Rashford, Bruno, all at similar prices. You've had that consistency. Going a little bit cheaper. I almost prefer the nailedness of someone like Mbeumo and Mitoma and Eze, who, if their team do well, they're going to get probably get bonus as well.
So many options in there. It's some, but even on this slide, we just named another 7 or 8 there. Like Mbeumo was in my draft, nailed at the moment. I haven't even mentioned him.
Sterling as well. I like that's a great shout. I really like Sterling at 7 million.
And Bowen as well, Bowen finished the season well, good fixtures, doing well in pre-season. So there's so many options. is superb.
I think I think if you set your team up, that's where you can have fun transfers wise.
Definitely.
I think there's 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah.
Keep rotating them around for the
And
fixtures.
I do like it because the pricing has been kind across the midfield, and but even though everyone's going to go on about the template, because of that, huge choice that you've got, maybe 12 to 15 great candidates in the mid-price bracket, you'll see a lot of different teams, early doors. You will see a lot of 3-5-2 setups, but you'll see a lot of difference in some people play. I agree with you. Go safe in terms of minutes. It's Arsenal and United assets. You want to take a bit more of a risk, with the teams with lower ownership, and the Fodens, the Maddisons, the Ezes. These guys are gonna potentially get you out in front early if they start well. So I'm really quite excited about the season not being too template.
And we haven't even really mentioned yet Brighton in terms of Mitoma. Solly March, who was in everyone's team last season, and Ciso at 5.5. If we are looking for someone for that price point, finished the season off really well before he got injured. So there's masses and masses here, and it's I suppose the balance is or the question is whether you just attack from game week 1 and go kind of all in on those, and then slowly move your team over, because it seems like we're talking about here potentially looking at, if we're going for a back 3 and the 2 up front, you probably want those to be pretty settled teams in terms of for the long, like medium term, maybe the first 8 game weeks. Whereas your midfielders, you can probably afford to tack a little bit more, then go for the immediate points in front of you, and then use your transfers to shift those players around.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. Mitoma's a funny one. I think Brighton are as well, because they've got great fixtures. They've got great attacking stats this year. But towards the end, we saw quite a bit of rotation. They're in Europe, so we'll see even more rotation. And Mitoma didn't have a brilliant end to the season.
Have I guessed which game week he scored his last goal in the season?
29 maybe, I don't know.
Rich?
Maybe 27, I'm going to go.
31.
29. That's when he scored his last goal.
I should have stuck with it.
You should have stuck with it. But yeah, so he didn't actually score a goal in the final quarter of the season.
Wow.
Which he was incredibly unlucky, but yeah, and obviously they've lost McAllister, they've lost Casado, they've got João Pedro, Ferguson is in or out. I just don't think we know how they're gonna line up, and there are too many other options who are nailed. The lineup. So for me, I haven't had Mitoma in any draft yet. Don't get me wrong, he could do absolutely fantastically well. De Zerbi's incredible manager. They're a great team, but I think there's other options.
That's the thing with Brighton. They lack a talisman. Yeah. They've got loads of players that huff and puff and get involved, but it's very well spread.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Whereas you've tempted me now just from this conversation, because I've liked Mbeumo from the start. I thought he finished the season incredibly well last season. But Eze is the one that's tempting me now.
Eze for me is...
I really like maybe it. Over Mitoma. It's just, do you know what all it is? It's that Luton at home first fixture that's really enticing me. Yeah. That's all it is at the moment.
Yeah, no. I agree with that. And yeah, you don't want to potentially overthink it, do you? By dropping Mitoma ahead of that, and then he gets a goal and assist, and immediately from game week 1, what was I doing? Was I overthinking it? Definitely one to consider. Let's take a look.
Do you think just on Brighton?
Yeah,
and not just on midfielders. Do you not get a little bit? I know they're in Europe and everything, but the reason we all went in on Brighton was because they had 5 double game weeks in the last 10 weeks or whatever it was. That obviously isn't the case now. So I'm just a little bit worried that we've got a bit blinkered with our Brighton passion, if you like, and their fixtures are good. They are an exciting team that have a lot of goal attempts, and so the stats back it up. But is a triple up? Should we all be tripling up? I'm just not sure.
I wonder if even Estupinan is almost a decent attacking cover almost as well, because you've got a little bit there with him. If you've got no Brighton, then I can understand, but I think Estupinan is, he's pretty good. Let's have a look at forwards, gents. Again, really, really interesting. Haaland plus 1 seems to be the way a lot of people are going, but there are some interesting options here, and a lot of low-owned players, I think. Just on the slide, obviously you got Ollie Watkins, finished season really well, but to Adam's point, maybe 4 of the first 6, maybe not better start with him. Harry Kane, I mean, how can you overlook Harry? I saw something yesterday, I didn't even realise. Didn't he only finish like 10 points behind Haaland for FPL points last year or something crazy like that, which is just insane when you think about it. Obviously, if Kane does leave, they don't have the best fixtures, and he could be leaving. It'll be interesting to see if Richarlison steps up there. Does that make Son a better option, or someone else, or Kulusevski, for example? Right in the middle is one who's interested in me is Darwin Núñez. Is he eventually going to turn this XG into G? I don't know, but he scored yesterday. He started up front in the number 9 role. 7.5 million. I think that's very, very cheap for a starting number 9 in a top 2 or 3 club. And Kunku've got in there as well. Came on yesterday in the second half, scored. You can probably wait and see on Chelsea, as we kind of mentioned earlier, till game week 3, see how he settles in. And another one which is quite popular, there's a couple of 6 million players, Calvert-Lewin, but people are quite hot on Vissa from Brentford, who I just think Mbomo at 6.5 to me is the no-brainer Brentford pick. If he keeps his position where he was, he's on penalties. I think he was on some free kicks as well. So, but just a few options there. Adam, can I come to you on forwards and your obviously at the moment I've got Jesus in my draft. I think he's great to start off with.
Yeah, which player do you think out of all the attackers below 9 million? Last season had the top expected points per match.
Below 9 million.
Below 9 million. So I've just taken out Haaland, Kane, Salah, basically, because I thought it would be.
Is Darwin in there? Was Darwin under 9 million?
Darwin is under 9 million, but it's good, but it's not the one.
Really? Oh, okay. Interesting.
No.
I know he's
not been mentioned. This person has not been mentioned for a.
We should just stop the podcast now and say, find out next week.
Yeah, we should. So I'll tell you, second is Tony. Obviously, he's banned, but top is Mitrovic. And
God,
yeah, so I'm not going there, but I just thought it was a random one.
It looks like wow. It looks like he's probably leaving, and there has been I'm not sure how much Vinicius is, but a few people have said Vinicius as a third striker potentially,
possibly.
Anyway,
that's surprising.
That is interesting.
But for me, I think the best striking option. I do like Watkins, but I just think Villa's fixtures are quite tough for the first 6. I prefer Gabriel Jesus. I think he's I think he could, particularly with the 4 home games. I think he's a really, really good option. And I quite like Haaland, Jesus, and a 4.5. And actually, that is probably the most set. That is pretty much set. I'm very, very confident on that. So
Vinicius is 5 million, just to say.
It's important to cover that 8 million position, because you can pretty much go anywhere from there.
Yeah,
if suddenly someone starts to shine in the same price bracket or just below that, you can just go straight to them after you've got that very safe Arsenal start there. And that's why when you see my draft, I'm still not sure about it, because I haven't covered that yet, and I haven't got Jesus in there. But yeah, I do get it. I literally get it, and I think out of the 8, he's the one to start with.
I think if you put it into just really, really simple terms, why not start? We've all said we want to start with 5 midfielders, or pretty much that's the way most are going to go. Why not start with Man City's and Arsenal's, who probably look the best 2 teams, number 9 at the moment? It just seems really, really obvious. They've both got good fixtures, 4 fixtures at home for Arsenal, and that's where Jesus, I think, has looked better, and Arsenal have looked better. He's missed a lot of chances, but do you know what? At least you'll get the drama with it. You always feel better, don't you? Like, oh, wow, he had a good XG. He had a good XG. I was unlucky. At least he can play that card as well if it doesn't happen.
Would you rather have Darwin Núñez at 7.5 or Foden at 7.5?
Oh, Foden, easily.
Really?
Yeah, well, just because I just think for me, with Darwin, I think that he's not guaranteed to start or get decent minutes. I appreciate Foden isn't at the moment as well, but I think I like I said, I've got my forwards that I prefer, and I think I can see why people are considering Foden. Darwin, don't think he's nailed to start. He wasn't in Liverpool's best team towards the end of last season.
He's got the number 9 shirt. That means everything.
That changes everything. But yeah, Jota come on and got 2 goals yesterday and an assist. You got Hakpo as well. Yeah. I just think their fixtures aren't good enough, and there's just too much with all 5 of them fit. Salah's starting, and I actually think Luis Diaz will probably end up starting the season. So effectively, got 3 players for one position. So
yes, that's another midfielder we haven't talked about yet. Just to put in another midfielder.
I think he could be an option at some point in the season, but to start the season over Gabriel Jesus or even Ollie Watkins, not for me. Okay. I just don't see it, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Rich, thoughts on forwards?
Yeah, as I said, more about price point cover. I think most people are going to have a bench for the 4.5, and I think that's the more logical way to go from a structure perspective. But I think pick a striker around that 8 million price point. So I think Wilson's another one. Apart from Newcastle's fixtures, clearly he could start. He starts the season well. He's probably worth a mention. But Newcastle's fixtures again, they're really tough over the first 6, and because of the Champions League and stuff, I just don't think I'd start there. I think Jesus is the safe pick. I've gone for a different person in my draft that's not on this slide. So we'll wait for that. And,
I would have stuck him on, Rich, but his photo's too big.
Yeah,
it distorted the picture.
Your pick interested me, actually. Your pick's, we won't say who it is, but it's interested me, particularly listening to what you've just said about price points without giving too much away. And it almost contradicts it.
It's all right, you can move to Calvert-Lewin, don't worry.
Yeah, well, Calvert-Lewin is another person that, but I mean, he's more injury prone than Reece James, isn't he? I mean,
you're not going to go there.
Worth it, is he? He'll get a knock in the warm up, and that'll be your team in bits, won't it? So yeah.
Let's take a look at our drafts. Rich, you've got your one up first. It's just, obviously we should caveat we're 3 weeks away. There's still a lot of information, but Rich, your team here on screen has got a team rating of 92%, which is a pretty good start. A game week 1 rating of 91% for the first game week, 65.4 predicted points. Don't forget, everyone watching or listening, if you want to get your own team rated for absolutely free, top link description below. And if you want to join for the more premium features, 50% off. But you can get your team rated for absolutely free. Rich, do you want to talk us through your team?
Yeah, absolutely. And I made it a bit different on purpose because I didn't want to just come on the show with a template that's the same as everybody else's. So at the moment I stuck Flecken in as the 4.5 pick, but again it's more about the price point here, and I could easily jump on Pickford or another 4.5 option. There was Areola was rumored to possibly becoming the West Ham number 1, but again I'm not sure whether pre-season will reveal that. So Areola's got the 4.0 spot, and then in the defense I've currently got 4 decent defenders in here. So I've got Estupiñán and Gabriel Trent. I think if I go for a 3-man and 2 4s, I would probably look at maybe trying to cram Luke Shaw in there over Estupiñán perhaps, but I like Gabriel's definitely in, Trent's definitely in for me. The other positions are more floating, and I've looked at the fixtures for City, and I just thought I do want to try and get triple City in there, just on that, purely on that good teams, good fixtures. So if you've got an opportunity to afford triple City and triple Arsenal in a draft, why are we not drafting 3 players from each of those teams in? So John Stones is sitting on the bench at the moment because I'm still really considering him, and I think he's the pick of the City defenders. In the midfield, the 5 I've gone with in this draft are Rashford, Saka, Mitoma, Foden, and Martinelli. So Martinelli is probably the least one I'm sure about, but I just feel that because I haven't gone for Jesus up front, I've got the two, 8 million or 8.5 million Arsenal options in midfield, but I could obviously switch that around and move to Jesus up front as discussed. And I think having talked it through with you guys, I think that's possibly the safer way to go. But I do like Martinelli. I think there's the rumours about his minutes being managed and other options in that position. Obviously, Havertz could play there, but I think Martinelli is going to be nailed for the first few weeks. I think he's going to come out on absolutely on fire. What was it? How many goals did he get last season? I mean, it was 15, wasn't it? 15 goals and 9 assists, was it? I mean, that's tremendous return for 8 million. That's still a great return. So really like Martinelli. And then my big sort of surprise pick is partly because I had a bit of a roller coaster ride with him in the tail end of last season was Evan Ferguson. So I really am strongly tipping Ferguson for this season. I think he's had his sort of, introductory season last season. He's going to get more game time. I think he could become Brighton's talisman player and he will get most of the start. So for 6 million, I think he's a really good pick if you want to go for that power 5 midfield and rather put the extra couple of million into that than go for Jesus. So he's in as my third Brighton option at the moment. Having him as a 100% differential in game week 37 when he scored a couple of goals, effectively saved my season from going down the pan. My rank had trebled in 2 weeks, 2 bad game weeks, and he came through after I'd almost regretted buying him. So anyone who did own him, who's had experience of getting his points, will probably favour him over people that haven't owned him yet. So he's definitely worth considering. And then on my bench, I've just got a couple of placeholder players like a 4.0 defender in Bayer, and I've gone for Cameron Archer as the 4.5. Don't know if you think he'll get any game time at, but he's really just there as the third bencher.
I think he might get a few minutes. I mean, we will see. Yeah. It looks like Duran's potentially going out on loans. He's not included in the US tour, so that could be good for Cameron Archer. But I think your 4.5, you're not going to start them. It'll just be the odd cameo as and when needed. Yeah, I like that team, Rich.
I like that Ferguson shout. It's kind of low risk as well, isn't it? Really,
Well, for the first few games, I think before the European competition starts, I do think he'll get most of the games. And as you say, are they playing the first week? Is it Luton?
Home to Luton. I'd be really tempted to look at the friendlies and potentially even start off with like a 3-4-3 with. I prefer with Jesus with Ferguson the third, but. Yeah, interesting stuff there. Just in terms of the recommended transfers for your team. So this is the pro feature on Fantasy Football Hub. It says Martinelli to Bruno. Favours Bruno.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Foden to Curtis Jones. You can ignore that. That was just a small bug now, which has been fixed. But
okay. I was going to say I can see the logic in 2 of those recommendations.
It's releasing funds. It's releasing funds, but it should have gone down to a 4.5. Yeah. And then Ferguson up to Jesus. So interestingly, Martinelli to Bruno, Ferguson to Jesus. The algorithm fancies Bruno. And the middle one is just obviously releasing some funds there, but
I really like this. I really like this as a new feature on the hub, and I think I will take a lot of notice of this. But is it going to make one recommendation after the season starts, or is it going to make
game
3
week 1?
Week?
No. This is just 3 now in pre-season. After game week 1, it will tell you what optimally you should do. So sometimes it'll say to save. Sometimes it'll say to do 1. Sometimes if you have saved, it'll tell you to do the 2 potentially, or do 1, save the second. But up to game week 1, if you make those 3 transfers, Rich, and then go back in and run it again, it will actually do you another 3. It'll improve your rating, say 94, 95%, and then tell you your next 3 again. If you do those, it'll tell you again, almost till you get up to 99 or 100%. Okay. So, but the reason I like this feature is it just, even if you don't go with the recommendations, it just gives you something you haven't thought about, and it gets you out of bias and bubbles. This is all data. It's all data. So it just makes you think. It makes you think, why is it suggesting this? And that's why I really enjoyed it last year in terms of that. Adam, let's have a look at your team, 98% rating for Adam. Do you want to run us through? It is Tommy template, but do you want to run us through?
Tommy. Yeah, it's definitely Tommy template, but that's my plan. I'm going template. I don't care. I'm template and proud. Pickford in goal, Trent, Estupinan, and Gabriel. And then I've gone 3-5-2. So midfield, I've got Mbeumo, Saka, Bruno, Rashford, Matoma, and then Gabriel Jesus, and Haaland up front. And then I've got a bench of Baldock, Bayer, Semenyo, and Abriola. So I haven't paid too much attention to the bench, if I'm being honest. They won't be used. They will never start a match. They were unless, well, under my control, they will not be starting a match. You're never going to start a Sheffield United player, are you? When you could just make a transfer. So fairly happy with it. A couple of things I could do. I could do Gabriel and Bruno to Martinelli and Shaw, possibly. I have thought of that. So yeah, there's a few options there, but I don't think my team will be massively different to what you see on the screen from day one.
You've got your price points in place, haven't you? Which is the most important thing.
Exactly.
And then you just, your 50-50s, Mitoma or Eze or whoever, Bruno or Martinelli or kind of, whoever it is, but your structure's in place there. And a good team.
That's what I like, and I almost like, and is that with the bench, they're at the lowest point players, and I will just leave them and not worry about them. So it might mean that I can hold my wild card as long as possible. That's the plan, because most of the players on there are fairly reliable. So yeah, it should. I've gone really template. I've gone high on expected minutes. I think all of my players are pretty much guaranteed to start as well. So yeah, it's very boring, I'm afraid.
Nice and safe. It's nice and safe.
Oh, it's safe.
It's you're not going to go. You're going to see a lot of teams in that structure and with those players.
Yeah.
And the recommendations, Adam, in terms of your team, because you were 98%, it was quite hard to improve your team, but it does suggest Pickford to Steele, Gabriel to Ake, but part of the reason it may have done that, Saka to Odegaard. So at the moment, Odegaard is just favoured slightly in terms of the argument to score more points. But Gabriel to Ake, all these point differences, as you can see from the graphs, are very, very minimal. They just get you slightly up there. But as I kind of mentioned at the start of the show, the algorithm is very, very much favouring triple Arsenal attack and Man City defence, which again shows here. So. And finally, onto my team at the moment. Again, it's not set, right? I'm also on 98%. I've gone for a couple of different-ish sort of plays. I have got Steele in goals, and I've got Estupinan and Gabriel. I've gone for Dallo at 5 million. He's probably just I just don't fancy Shaw for 5.5. He's not showing it very favourably on the algorithm. I just think he's a bit expensive, personally, 5.5 for Shaw. I think, if he was 5, he'd be indefinitely. But at the moment, I've got in Dallo for 5. If Onana signs and goes in at 5 million, I'll probably go for Onana. I'll have to have a bit of a shift about there. And then I've got Botman at 4.5, but I'll very probably change that to Rico Henry for Brentford. I just prefer a bit more of an attacking defender for 4.5, and Bayer is the 5th defender. Very rough, but obviously the headline here, I don't have Trent. Don't think I'll start with Trent either. I've got to be honest. I think I would rather push my money up the pitch. Midfield at the moment, Rashford, Bruno. We haven't talked much about Bruno. There's a bit of a debate in the chat about whether he's a good pick or not. Obviously, his underlying stats were ridiculous last year. Created the most chances in the league and things. So that there's a bit of a debate there.
He's a very good price, isn't he?
He is, and this is it. Saka. Mbeumo, I think, is a steal at his price, and at the moment I've got in Son at 9 million. He's a bit, I know I think he's like 6% owned. He's quite, but just that player who could absolutely pop off out of the blue. But again, it doesn't have to be Son. It could be any of those midfielders we talked about, right? And obviously the main difference in my team is someone like Son and Dallo to Trent and Mitoma potentially, something like that. It doesn't have to be Dallo. I've just got him at the moment because again, he popped up in the algorithm as someone, if he does start, does very, very well. So we'll just have to see how that plays out. And then Haaland and Jesus, up front with the 4.5. So again, I suppose what all our three teams have shown, there's a lot of similarities. Estepina and Rashford, Haaland, Arsenal midfielder, but there are quite big differences you can make in the other 6 or 7 spots in your team, as well. Including the keeper, the third defender, the fourth and fifth midfielder, and even the first forward. So there's quite a lot you can go for there. So some interesting stuff. And in terms of what it recommends for me, it says Gabriel to Stones and Dalot to Ake, and then Son to Odegaard. So again, it's just going down that line of triple Arsenal attack and Man City defence. Ake's minutes may slightly be altered now, obviously, with the signing of Guardiola, I believe plays on the left, left centre back and can play left back. So that'll be interesting to see how that pans out. But if you want your recommendations yourself, you need to sign up on one of the paid packages, and you'll get these recommendations every single week in the hub. Thoughts on Son, just out of interest?
I think it's fine as an option. I just prefer Rashford and Saka and the Arsenal boys. So yeah, he's fine as an option.
It's the fixtures, Fergie. I mean, it's basically like 3 away games. I mean, admittedly against the 3Bs, Brentford, Bournemouth, Burnley. But the first home game is in week 2 against Man United. And you've got to wait till game week 5 before they play Sheffield United. And then after that, they got Arsenal away. So it's just one sort of, banging fixture, if you like, in the first 6. Just doesn't excite me. Fair. So
I tell you what, these algorithm picks have highlighted for me. Actually, I really, really like the thought now of taking out Gabriel and going for a triple Arsenal attack. I think those opening few fixtures are so exciting. And any of those players could double haul, right? Any of them could double return. Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka, Jesus, they could all double return in those, opening sort of 3 or 4 games. I think that's the kind of thing I look from the algorithm. It gives you something to maybe think about, and maybe getting that Man City defender and going for a third Arsenal thing, is the way to go. So. Lovely stuff, chaps. Just a reminder to everyone watching and listening, you can get your own FPL team rated now for free using the top link in the description below. Let us know your ratings in the comments if you do. For those who want a bit more, such as recommended transfers, Hopta Stats, points predictions, expert team reveals, dedicated WhatsApp groups, and so much more, you can sign up now to one of our paid services, which currently have 50% off annual packages. And we're so confident in the product that if you don't win your specified mini league, we will give you your money back at the end of the season. Terms and conditions apply. There's never been a better time to join the hub. It is absolutely blowing up. It's absolutely fantastic. If you want to chat FPL at any time, day or night, we have a Discord server now. Link is below. Last check, I think there's about 700 odd people in there, all chatting FPL all day and night, absolutely free. Come in and chat everything fantasy football now and throughout the summer. Again, absolutely free. And thank you so much for everyone for joining us this week. Great to have you in the chat. Over 500 people watching, which for this time of the season is absolutely insane. So thank you so much for everyone who has joined us on their lunch times or wherever else you've done it from. We really, really appreciate it. Thanks for those who are going to watch it back and those listening to the podcast version. Your support, as usual, is very, very much appreciated. Adam, thank you so much for joining us on your lunchtime. Where can people get hold of you?
On Twitter at Hopta Stats.
Lovely stuff. And Rich, where can people get hold of you?
At Rich Clarke FPL on Twitter as well.
And we'll also touch in the next pod a bit around Rich's Ultra service, which is really kicking off on the hub as well. A lot more personalized information from Rich and his team of fantastic experts. My handle on Twitter is at FFH_Fergie. This podcast and video will be on the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel, with the podcast versions available on all major podcast platforms. Don't forget, on this same channel, if you go back, my team, this team I just actually put up now is back a couple of days ago. I was talking with Jack through it in a bit more depth. You've got the initial team reveals of people like Bakar, I think Rich, FPL Salah, or Heisenberg, Holly Shandle. These amazing managers. They will be all through pre-season, all used in the My Team tool as well. If you like what you watched, please press the like button. It would be much, much appreciated. It really does help us. Remember to subscribe to the channel at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. If you enjoyed your listen, please rate the podcast and leave a comment, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else. We'll be back in 2 weeks. So we're not going to do next week because we think we'd just be kind of talking about the same sort of stuff. But we'll be back in 2 weeks, which will be 8 days before the deadline for a game week 1 preview pod. We will go through things in a bit more depth, look at, predicted points. Look, our draft will probably be a lot clearer by then. And then we'll be revealing our final drafts live the week after, which will be the day before the game week 1 deadline, which was absolutely fantastic fun last year. So we'll be doing that. In the meantime, happy drafting, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine, and may all your beers be cold. Good night, all.